This is a really fun movable feast, ladies and gentlefolk. I'm now going to bring in Natalia Greene from Ecuador. Hello, Natty. How are you?
Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with you all tonight for me, early
Yeah.
morning for you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Natty. And as we always joke when we're meeting in different times, tomorrow is looking good for you, Natty, because today is lovely over here. So
That's great. The past is great so far.
still blows my mind, our time zones on this beautiful planet. Look, everyone, I'm so delighted that Natty can join us. She is an absolute treasure in terms of building the movement for the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature over the last 10, 15 years, and ongoing work, not just building a global alliance of people interested in changing the legal systems, but also focusing very much on the work in Ecuador. So just to let you know, Natty will give her talk now, and we'll have some Q&A with Natty. And then I'll be playing a pre-recorded talk by lawyer Hugo Echeverria, who's also from Ecuador. So the next hour will be a giant Ecuadorian love-in. So I'm really looking forward to that. Over to you, Natty. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Michelle. It's a pleasure to be here tonight with you all. And as I was looking into the presentation that I hope you're all looking at right now, it's September 28th already for you all. And a day like today, September 28th, 15 years ago, Ecuador became the first country in the world to recognize the rights of nature. So it's a real pleasure to be doing this talk on the exact anniversary of the rights of nature in Ecuador. So thank you for the invitation, Michelle. I am indeed the coordinator of the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature. I've been a secretariat for the International Rights of Nature Tribunals. And here in Ecuador, I am the vice president of SEDENMA, that is the National Coordinating Entity for Environmental NGOs. And today, what I'm going to be sharing with you is a little bit about the experience of how this movement has grown, but really focusing on what is happening with Ecuador. So first, by starting to say that rights of nature is this like necessary new paradigm, and that environmental law has not been enough. This has been proven. We have seen that environmental law has really been useful for humans' interests, and especially like for the corporate interests, because it's still been saying how much you can hit your slave, and not how if that slave is a slave or not, questioning that from the beginning. So the idea of the rights of nature and the understanding that nature has inherent rights, and that we need to recognize that is a paradigm shifter. And what I'm going to show you today is what has been how has this been changing the world, and especially Ecuador. So I remember, and I'll show you a picture later, that we had this quote. We were quoting Victor Hugo back in 2010, saying, "Rights of nature is a powerful idea whose time has come. There's nothing more powerful as an idea whose time has come." And it wasn't true. We were hoping that it was, but it wasn't true at that point, because it wasn't its time. We had been at that point. We created GARN in 2010, and I'll show you a little bit about that. But this was a movement that was very recent. It was hard to get even people in Ecuador to understand this. But 10 years, 15 years later, we have seen that this movement has gained traction, and this like huge ball that we're pushing up a mountain has started to roll down by itself, and is gaining more and more traction. And it is an idea whose time has come, and it's an idea whose time has come in a world that is hurting. A world in the Anthropocene. I think that it's very. We all know that we are in a polycrisis, that we are already in the Anthropocene of how humans have changed the world. We are very aware of these graphs. For me, like I studied climate change as a master's degree, and these projections always like scare me, because if we don't do anything and we don't like stabilize the temperature 1.5 degrees, then we know what's happening. We know the catastrophe that is ahead of us. But I was bringing this idea of climate change because of this need to leave 2/3 of all known fossil fuel reserves underground, because of also an introduction of what we're doing in Ecuador. So looking at the world and looking at the world's biodiversity, you can see that a lot of the biodiversity is focused in the Amazon. If we look closely, this is a map that I love to share, because Ecuador is one of the most biodiverse countries in the world, and a lot of our biodiversity is focused here in the Amazon. And I feel that having that biodiversity really pushed us to think about a new model development back in 2008 in our constitution. Unfortunately, I feel that as civil society, we have been able to change a lot, but our governments keep on looking at Ecuador like that, a country that is divided into oil blocks, mining concessions, hydroelectric plants, and not really taking in consideration the privilege that we have of living in such a biodiverse country. But this change in 2008, especially for Ecuadorians and civil society, when we were able to pass this constitution that indeed recognized the inherent rights of nature. What it had, we pretty much recognized a new model of development called Buen Vivir or Suma Causa, that is oddly translated to good living or well-being. This model of development has like two very important steps. It has the rights of nature, and it has the plurinationality, the idea that we have indigenous people living within our territory. And without these two, we cannot achieve a new model of development. That is a way going away from like capitalism or socialism. Is a model of development really based on a new idea, based on this vision of Buen Vivir, that is based on a new relationship, a new balance, a balance and harmony with nature, with your family, with people, but with everything that surrounds you. So what were we able to include here? This is long, so I'm not going to read it all to you, but I'm only going to read Article 71. Chapter 7 of our Constitution says, nature, Pachamama, where life is reproduced and occurs, has the right to the integral respect for its existence and for the maintenance and regeneration of its life cycles, structure, functions, and evolutionary processes. Within this same language, we have the right in Article 72, the right for integral restoration. And it's really interesting, the Article 73 is an article that we have used a lot in our strategic litigation, and it says that the state should apply preventive and restrictive measures on activities that might lead to the extinction of species, destruction of ecosystems, and the permanent alteration of natural cycles. This has been really important because it has really allowed us to win some historic cases that I'll be sharing today with you all. What's really important about the rights of nature is not only having it in the Constitution, but also having principles that will start moving this machine, and having an empowered civil society and judges who are aware of this new paradigm, so they can really apply what has been placed in our Constitution. So for that, Ecuador didn't really pay much attention to it back in 2008 when we incorporated. It started paying some attention to it after the Cochabamba gathering. This happened in 2010 in Bolivia, the World People's Conference on Climate Change and the Rights of Mother Earth, where we met 33,000 people met, and one of the products was the Universal Declaration for the Rights of Mother Earth. Within all these amazing people, we met a group of people and realized that we were not so crazy only in Ecuador and Bolivia, but that we had crazy people in Australia, in Europe, in the US, in South Africa, and so on. And we created GARN, the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature, back in 2010. Now this movement, as I was saying earlier, has grown and has grown a lot. This is an anniversary that we had for the 10-year anniversary of the rights of nature. So this was 5 years ago. And we see that the rights of nature is an emerging, powerful global movement to transform human consciousness, redesign failing and consumptive economic and social structures, and create a framework for living in harmony with nature, grounded in the recognition of the rights of Mother Earth. We even have the Secretary General saying that the Earth Jurisprudence model movement is the fastest growing movement in the world right now. We have amazing people like Pino Solana saying that the 20th century was the century of human rights, when the 21st century is the century of the rights of nature, and that's what we want to believe as true. Something that Margaret was so kindly introducing is that one of the strategies that we have used as GARN, that GARN as an alliance is not this big NGO. GARN as an alliance is a group of amazing people, and what we do as GARN is we just want to connect all these amazing things happening with the rights of nature. And to do that, we created regional hubs. So we created GARN Europe, GARN Africa, GARN Latin America. There are two recent hubs that are just being created, GARN North America and the Asian Hub. And we also have a thematic hubs, like the youth hub, a legal hub that Margaret is leading, and the academic hub that there's been a lot of work for many people here, and I'll show you a little bit about that work, and the Indigenous Council. The idea of this hub is to really bring people together within their regions, within their languages, without their interests, so we can grow this movement. If we can see that the timeline with the rights of nature, and I wanted to show you this, and I'll show you a couple of maps later, you'll see that nothing really happened. We had, like, in 1972, the article of Christopher Stone talking about should trees have standings. Back in 2006, we had Tamaqua Borough, the first a little town that recognized in its local ordinance the rights of nature. And it was really after 2008, as I was saying, like right in this date, September 28, that we were able to recognize the rights of nature in Ecuador, that this movement starts growing and growing. And we were very happy to share this. Now we were at Climate Week. We had these huge balls of the world with this world map. And you can see here how what is happening. In Ecuador, we're still the only country that recognizes the rights of nature at its national constitution. But we do have countries like Panama, we have Bolivia, that are recognizing the rights of nature in their laws. There is, you can barely see it here, but Aruba right here is amending its constitution. If Aruba is able to amend its constitution, then the Netherlands is next. So that's the way, and the entry to Europe as well. There are court decisions in the countries in these two greens that you're looking up here, but the countries that we have, especially like Brazil, Colombia, the US, India, and Spain, are countries that either have the recognition of the rights of nature in their cities or in different ecosystems that have been granted rights. And the other ones, we either have local ordinances or proposals. I'll be sharing here, like we have legal advances in these 22 countries. So we say with accuracy that we have more than 35 countries that have adopted the rights of nature in the world right now. With legal advances, there are 22, and there are projects in 17 countries. And we can talk more about this in the Q&A. I'll be happy to share a little bit more about this. But I want to share that at the constitutional level, as I was saying, we have Ecuador and Aruba, hopefully soon. At the legislative level, we have Panama, Bolivia, Spain, and New Zealand, and the cities of Mexico and municipalities in Brazil. And at the jurisprudential level, we have India and Colombia, where judges play a very important role. As I was saying, ecosystems that have been granted rights are cases like the Amazon in Colombia, the Mar Menor in Spain, and rivers. We have 41 cases of rivers, the Wanganui, the Trato, Bangladesh, Rio Dulce, Magpie, Alambi, San Loris, that have been given rights. And that's why, like, we marched on Climate Week with these big banners saying no climate justice without the rights of rivers, because there's such a big movement with the rights of rivers. But also, the idea of animals having rights, not only one species or one individual, but the case of Estrellita that I'll be sharing, and the case of the turtles in Panama. So when we see the Eco-Jurisprudence Monitor, that is the one of the results of the academic hub and of the monitor itself, and I urge you to go either to the website of the Eco-Jurisprudence Monitor or to our GARN website, where you'll see this. You will have both this political map and the ecosystem map. But what I want to show here is what I love, that we know we live in a hurting world, but all these little balls, red balls that start getting bigger and bigger, for me is a sort of acupuncture that we're doing to the world. You know, it's like all these strategies that are starting small all over the world, but are becoming bigger. And I feel is an amazing world to be healing the world. Here you can see the map without the country limits. How is it growing? You'll see in the Eco-Jurisprudence Monitor, when you visit us, that we have like legal provisions where you can see these cases, if there are cases, citizen tribunals, constitution, declarations, indigenous law, policies, and so on. So you can go and visit these. You can also see it by actor if these recognitions are being done for nature, for animals, for forests, for plants, for marine ecosystems. And you can also see it by regions. definitely like North America and Latin America are regions where we're having a lot of success with these initiatives. And landing in Latin America, as I was sharing, in 2016, there was a protection of the Atrato River in Colombia. There was a Bill of Rights that was not yet recognized, but there was it was presented in Peru in 2021. Bills of Rights recognized in Mendoza, in Argentina. There was the debate on the Chilean constitution that unfortunately didn't pass. The ombudsman for Bolivia, many municipalities in Brazil, and we have in Ecuador 70 cases already in our legal observatory. We have the Rights of Nature tribunals that have been a platform, an amazing platform to really show, and this has been a work that we promoted as GARN, to have a platform where we viewed nature as a subject of rights, and viewed many cases from all over the world with a panel of amazing ethical judges. And you can see like all the tribunals that we have done. I don't want to stop here because I want to be sharing like this amazing news. The last big tribunal that we did, a international tribunal, we did it on false solutions to climate change and the Amazon as a threatened entity. And we have also done in situ visits in Brazil, in Mexico, for the Tren Maya, and in Vaca Muerta in Argentina. So here's what I wanted to land with some good news, because I feel that we are all in a desperate need of good news. And that is, I want to tell you what's going on in Ecuador. And we have really cases on the vanguard. We have amazing cases that have been selected by the Constitutional Court. We also have territories that are living this in practice. So, for example, the Sarayacus with the Causa Isacha, that is the Living Forest Proposal, is a territory that is consciously living in the practice of the rights of nature in their territory. We have amazing cases that if you have not yet read, I really advise you to read. We actually have like a professional translation of this verdict, that is the case of Los Cedros, because unfortunately in Ecuador, we cannot have cattling or agriculture in protected areas, but we can have mining, which is completely absurd. In the case of Los Cedros, this case was selected by the Constitutional Court, and in the case, the judge Agustin Grijalva, after listening to 75 amicus curiae, most of them scientists representing the monkeys, the spiders, the frogs, the orchids, and so on, it came to the conclusion that no activity that threatens the rights of nature can be developed within the ecosystem of Los Cedros, including mining and any other extractive activity. So this was an amazing news, and definitely some jurisprudence that we want to keep on replicating in Ecuador. Then we have, as I was sharing, this case of animal rights with the case of Estrellita, that the Constitutional Court in the Constitutional Assembly in 2008 didn't recognize the rights of the animals, and the Constitutional Court now was able to advance the rights of nature to include the rights of the animals with the case of Estrellita, with this monkey that was considered a pet in a house, and when they took her to the zoo, she died, and through an habeas corpus, the family placed this case. And we have gas flaring cases. As you know, oil threatens our Amazon, and there's all this gas flaring burning all the time in the Amazon. We placed a case on gas flares with climate change, the rights of indigenous women, and the rights of nature, and won this case. Now we are hoping to turn off the gas flares in the Amazon. And this is like one of the two victories that I wanted to share, the latest victories. In March this year, these two frogs, Rana nodriza confusa, that was renamed as resistance frog, and Rana arlequino secuda, won in intact cloud forests, and were able, these rediscovered frogs that were not considered in the environmental impact study, were able to win to a huge Codelco, a company that is a mining company, copper mining company from Chile, and revoked the environmental impact study. So this is a really amazing, successful case of rights of nature winning on court. This is the little one. This is like how big this little one is, and it's amazing that this species can win a huge mining company like Codelco. So I wanted to show you this picture, and then the latest victory. Back in 2000, this year, 2023, August 20th, Ecuador had a major popular referendum where we were fighting to leave the oil underground in the Yasuní National Park in the ITT block and to prohibit mining in the area of Quito, my city, where I am. And that here it says ganó el sí, the yes won. Yes to life. Yes, because 59% of the country voted in favor of keeping fossil fuels underground in the Yasuní National Park, and 69% of the population of Quito voted in favor of eliminating and prohibiting mining in Quito. These victories are for sure victories that are coming from having 15 years of the rights of nature in Ecuador. And our next phase is pretty much how do we enforce these laws, these amazing verdicts, and start a transition towards post-extractivism. The challenge is, of course, how do we expand the victory of Los Cedros, for example, to protected forests like this one in Dracula, where we have these amazing species. So we have a lot of litigation to do. 244 cases is still where there are like protected forests collapsed with mining concessions. So a lot of work to do still in Ecuador, but a lot of victories that are happening with the rights of nature. The last thing is that we have this is in Spanish, but we have a juridical observatory for the rights of nature in Ecuador, where you can find all the cases from Ecuador and all the documents. And yeah, my contact information, the GARN website, the Rights of Nature Tribunal website, and this last one, the Legal Observatory website, and my email, so you can learn more about Ecuador, learn more about the rights of nature, learn more about GARN, that is this amazing, huge, amazing organization that is pretty much embracing this huge growing movement of the rights of nature. So I want to be fair with my time, and I know, Michelle, I talk really, really fast, so I hope you all understood me, but there are so many amazing news that I wanted to share with you all that I just wanted to make sure that all of that was shared in this conversation. Thank you, Michelle, and thank you everybody for listening.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Natty. Particularly your talk, but and the slides are a really excellent way to get that quick overview of the immense growth in this space that certainly I've seen over the last 11 or 12 years since I've been sort of involved in it. So, Natty, what's next for the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature? I know at the moment the focus is on getting local hubs so that they can focus on the kinds of work that they're doing. But what do you feel over the next year or two are the priorities for the network? And then I might turn to Ecuador itself.
Sure. So thank you, Michelle, for that question. So we gathered last year in Siena and had like a strategic planning of where we want the movement to grow. Definitely what we were looking at is that, as I was sharing in the beginning, we were pushing this huge ball at the mountain. And when this ball starts rolling down, GARN doesn't own the ball, you know, GARN doesn't own the movement. But I feel that GARN's role is pretty much to accompany that ball, you know, to make sure that that we trim, you know, anything that we take out like a rock or something that can be impeding, you know, the growing movement. That's the role of GARN, to make sure that it's going in the right direction, that it's not being like absorbed by corporate interests, you know, because like we listen to all these like nature-based solutions and all these things that can be that are fast solutions to our climate crisis. And the idea of the rights of nature, we want to make sure that is really considering the inherent rights of nature and how we change and rebalance our relationship with nature, and that the movement keeps growing like that. Definitely what we want for the next years as GARN is to have these 9 hubs consolidated. These hubs with their different structures, languages, and members consolidated, so the moment can keep on growing in different regions and within different topics. We definitely want to approach the faith community. Last year, some of our members met with the Pope, and there's like a lot of interest from like many religions to take on the idea of the rights of nature. We also want to make sure that the rights of nature movement is very present in international spaces. That's why we met many of our amazing members now in Climate Week, and we really want to make sure that it's out there, that we can promote this Universal Declaration for the Rights of Mother Earth within countries and take it to the UN level, and have countries start talking about it, and definitely keep on working on the International Rights of Nature Tribunals. We, as an ask from the people in Brazil, from the Xingu people, they asked us to organize a tribunal around mining, in Canada, where the money is coming from. And really, what as I was saying, we are working in a scenario of a global climate crisis, but we really want to put an emphasis, for example, in mining, because the energy transition is happening with minerals that are being taken out of our territories, of our forests, and we keep on strengthening that or deepening that gap with countries of the South that keep on providing minerals and for that energy transition. And we need to talk about how we change the system. And the rights of nature is a really powerful tool to do that. And we want GARN to be promoting and growing and bringing people together and having all these initiatives connect, so we can have more and more experiences and more acupuncture around this hurting world.
No, it's wonderful. Thanks, Natty. I'm just looking at the questions. There are actually much more comments. People saying, thank you so much for this excellent presentation. Very encouraging, very optimistic. And there are a number of people mentioning what's going on in their local places, particularly here in Australia. Okay, so just given the time we have, Natty, probably my final question would be, in terms of the work that you're doing more deeply in Ecuador, I remember you mentioning the culture change that had happened over the 10, 15 years you've been involved in this space. Did you just want to comment on what it is like to be a young person in Ecuador compared to when, in terms of their understanding of rights of nature versus when it all first started? What do you think you're seeing changing?
Well, people ask me about GARN and Ecuador, like, is it necessary to change the law? And I feel that it is necessary to change the law because when you change the law, you change people. And for me, these wins that I've shared today are amazing wins and amazing victories, but they are part of a population that has changed. As I was saying, we are celebrating today, and I cannot find a better way to celebrate it than with you all, the 15-year anniversary of the rights of nature in Ecuador. That means that a person who's entering, a young lawyer who's entering law school right now at 18, has passed like he had rights of nature when he was 3, which means that he's not questioning if nature should have rights. He's questioning why aren't our governments applying and guaranteeing the rights of nature, the inherent rights of nature. So I truly believe that changing the law has changed people and has really made us very aware that we are nature, that we are part of nature, that nature has rights, and that the population has changed. I don't think that we would have achieved these like last victories, especially with like a national vote, because remember in Ecuador, voting is mandatory. So all of Ecuadorians voted, and 59% of Ecuador decided to leave fossil fuels in the ground. So that's why I started that slide with saying like we need to leave 2/3 of the oil reserve underground. Well, we just decided that on a democratic vote in one of the most biodiverse places on Earth. So we said, let's start by doing this in one of the most biodiverse places on the Earth, that is the Amazon. So I truly believe that it's changing the people. And as much as we still have a lot of work, even the president, we need to get him to respect the vote. So there's a lot of work. Nothing is perfect, of course, but I do feel that the society has changed, and we have very empowered social movements. The Indigenous movement, the environmental movement in Ecuador are very empowered with the idea of the rights of nature, and that has really allowed a cultural shift within the country. And I feel that is why we want to promote the change in law in other places.
That's fantastic, Natalie. And it's just exactly what I think everyone needs to hear now and then is the power of change is there. And there's been a number of questions about the Australian legal system. And I just want to invite everyone who's interested in the Australian aspect of rights of nature, which is a tricky, tricky space for so many important reasons. AELA will continue to have some further webinars later this year and next year about the Indigenous first laws that exist in this country and where the rights of nature does and doesn't connect with some of the groups who are working on greater protection for their own places. So there is a lot happening in Australia, but it's sort of quietly proceeding through some very important colonial legacy discussions. So yeah, anyone on the call today who's an Australian, please stay in touch with AELA, and we might try and get Natty and others back into a more discursive space. What the goal is today is to just have this wonderful run through of an update of what's going on. So on that note, Natty, I am going to let you go because I know it's evening time for you and you've got your beautiful young family. Natty, if you did want to stay on, I'm about to play the recording of the talk from Hugo, and he goes into a little bit more explanation about why he thinks the constitutional court's discussions and developments about rights of nature are so very important as a sort of next phase for what Ecuador's been building. So I'll just pause for a moment and start fiddling with some buttons and bring up his recording. But Natalia Greene, so lovely to see you again, and really appreciate you making the time to share this important work.